joining us again this morning because it's Thursday and it makes a return on the show. Joshua Moses, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. How's your week been so far?
Yeah, it's been fine. It's been going okay. We're grateful for what we have, and the things we don't have, we work towards them.
Well, that's a prayer. Thank you very much. And today, one of the major issues we want to take a look at this morning has to be one of the headlines, from different newspapers yesterday, specifically with this one, addressing it from The Guardian. And the headline says, Senate to revive power sector with Electricity Act reform. The Nigerian Senate on Tuesday began deliberations on critical legislative efforts to overhaul the Electricity Act of 2023. And the proposed amendments will look to rescue the country's power sector from looming collapse and strengthening legal and institutional framework of the amendment of that bill there to also ensure that debts are staggered in the sector and also curb persistent infrastructure sabotage due to vandalism. When the amendment was done, it offered states the ability to come up with their regulatory commissions and also possibly have their own infrastructure. But it looks like it hasn't been clarified over time. It's been hindering private investments, and it looks like what the Senate are doing right now to strengthen the legal framework would help improve the power sector. But beyond that, there's also the transmission issue here in the country with the federal government spending a whole lot of money. Recently, they talk about the legacy debt owed to the discos and the gencos, which they are trying to pay off. How will this, what the Senate is doing, providing further legal framework for the electricity amendment bill, help with private investments to ease the burden away from the federal government?
So when you talk about private investments, let's balance it against, let's say, telecoms industry when it was privatized, right? The right people came in with the right expertise and with the right capital. The idea of privatization is that we're giving it to private individuals with the wherewithal and the technical expertise to execute. Now you look at, compare Nitel to the current telecoms industry we have now. Basically, the telecoms companies overhauled the infrastructure and built from the ground up to what we currently have now, and we are enjoying. And it's one of the reasons why our economy was rebased, because it's helped other industries spring up. Now, what happened with the privatization of the power industry? It was man no man. The right people were not given this, and after privatization, they were still being given subsidies and funded. Government would take loans and give to them, and they weren't even servicing these loans, and nothing was done about it. Sometimes the EFCC will come in and a little prosecution here, a little prosecution there, and the case dies down. We've not heard that this company lost its license to get to this company. So it's a case of lack of transparency within this process. Now, this bill that's before the Senate is also a private sponsored bill that the senator representing Abia South is pushing in Abaribe. So it's not like it's from the Senate. So this is also an interested parties bill. Now, look at the power industry, the extractive industry. You have the Ajokuta steel, you have the Warri. These are some of the thorns in Nigeria's flesh, because it's a deliberate sabotage by people within that industry to make sure that it remains dysfunctional. Now you have over 4 trillion naira debt within the power industry that the gencos are owing to the discos are owing to the gencos are owing to the TCN. You remember during Muhammadu Buhari's regime, we also had the Siemens deal that collapsed. Now, and we also had issues with in terms of power generation, where there was a gas deal where they would take gas from the petroleum industry because a lot of our generating sets, our power generating industry are powered by diesel generators. So you can see that some of these issues are deliberately structured. If I was supplying diesel, I would not allow you. I'm not saying it's that simple, but these are some of the issues. There's not been transparency. You go to Aba, there was issue with one of the private power companies who set up a generation company, and the distribution company, they had capacity to generate. It took years and years of negotiation for that power company to come on stream. Now, this is against the backdrop of the fact that we've privatized this whole thing. We've removed it from the exclusive list. But how many states have invested? How many individuals have invested?
About 3 or 4 states are already set up their regulatory commissions.
Instead, they are not treating this as a business. I think most of them are treating this as charity. And what's happening? Individuals, companies are going off grid. they're setting up their own private systems that they are relying on. I know a lot of companies who do not rely on public power supply. Now, when this industry as it is begins to get its act right, where would the customers come from? When you've probably put solar panels in your house and you have no need for public power supply, you get the few people on it bearing the cost. Bear in mind, one of the reasons for the increase in the power tariff was that they wanted to, getting more money into the system and improve infrastructure. When last did you go to some communities, transformer goes bad, the community buys the transformer.
Yes, they will buy.
Meanwhile, whose job is it? Is it not the distribution company's job? You buy it and they claim to it. So where are all the monies they get from the bills going? Is it just to pay salaries? They are not even revamping and refurbishing their infrastructure. When last did you pass the street and they pull down the high tension to set up new ones? Or they just come to your estate and say, let's remove the transformer and give you people a brand new one that can carry more? They don't do this compared to the telecoms industry that does it regularly and even more regularly than any other industry that I know of.
All right, so the senators are calling for harsher penalties. One that was stated, there was death penalty for anybody that has been caught vandalizing this power system. Do you think that's a necessary move to actually penalize these people who are vandalizing the transformers and whatnot when it comes to electricity?
The issue of vandalizing electrical equipment can be quite hilarious, because that place on its own is a death trap.
Yeah.
So if you're going there, it means that you're not expecting death to visit you.
You already have it.
Because if there was power in the transformer, I don't think you will go there to vandalize. Is the lack of it. Death penalty, it feels like instead of addressing the major issue, we run to something else. We want to create fear and panic in the system. No, this is not the issue. Revamp the infrastructure, fund the system very well. Make sure that investors who are coming in have the wherewithal. For instance, some of the companies in the telecom space are not Nigerian companies. They came in from outside Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, Middle East, with their expertise and with the capital. Now, in the case of our power industry, they handed over to politicians, their friends, who don't have this. So at the end of the day, if you don't have the right infrastructure, the right who safeguards the telecoms equipment? They do that themselves. Now, the death penalty is something that a lot of countries are even trying to abolish, but you're bringing it in through the back door for something that we all know, for instance, is the job of the NSCDC to do, and they can work with these power companies. The power companies can even afford to pay for some of these services. So my thing is, I think the problem is a lot deeper. Why are we not seeing states invest in this massive power? In fact, some states that started independent power projects have not completed it up till now. Why? So these are some of the issues we need to look at. If there are regulatory bottlenecks, let's remove some of this. If the part needs to be imported, let's also work on getting this thing easier to come into the country and train the pipeline of engineers and people who will service this. The death penalty is just one of those things they put to make the bill sound, huge.
All right. Thank you very much, Joshua. I would just have to also say good morning to Wadi.
Good morning, Wadi.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm 10 minutes late.
Yeah.
I was listening to Joshua and I was shrieking in my car because I beg to differ, and I'll tell you the reasons why I beg to differ. Some of the major debts owed to the companies, the power companies, is owed by government, almost 4 trillion naira. And this is years of debt that hasn't been paid. So when the same government comes back and says, oh, the discos owe the gencos, transmission, which is a major part of it, we haven't expanded that infrastructure and it belongs to government. I'm not trying to the discos and the gencos have their issues. The gas issue that you were talking about, Joshua, the fact remains that the federal government, through the NMPC and all the gas contracts and gas arrangement contracts, are supposed to provide this. Now, the question was, the gas companies had asked some time back, how much were you going to pay for it? Were you going to pay economic value for it? Or market value for it? Let me put it that way. So for a long time under the Buhari administration, it stayed at, I think it was $3.50 or $2.50, and then it went up to $3.50, while the gas companies were asking for about $7 per cubic feed. So there are a lot of issues that everybody needs to sit down. Yes, you need investments here. However, where people buy into a sector, close to $4 billion was invested, take bank loans, and then overnight, exchange rate goes against you by 3. What do you do? Where people have agreements to invest 5 billion naira over a 5-year period, most of these monies were going to come through foreign exchange. Exchange rate goes against you 3 times. So the best you can do is those equipments that you were looking at 1 naira is now going to be 3 naira. And like I said, I'm not making excuses for the discourse, but we need to truly understand how power works. If the consumers don't pay, then nobody in the power sector is an inverted pyramid. I've said this so many times and I'm saying it again.
Yeah.
If the people don't pay, and one of the best ways for people to pay is to meter them.
Right. So before you go ahead with your thoughts and your possible rebuttal, just hold on that. We'll just have to go on a quick breather and we'll come back. And when we'll come back, I also want us to also focus on decentralizing power in Nigeria, generation and distribution, and what states can do now with the amendment bill and further strengthening of the bill from the Senate. This is City Press. This first half brought to you by Martina. Heading into the second half of the show here on Breakfast in the City on City 151.
True friendship lasts forever. True friendship, a gift we share together. No matter where you are, we're there together. Sharing moments, happiness is when we are together.
Share happiness. City 101.051.
Things you like you said.
What does the new Amstel Malta Sleek can look like? Sleek, tall, draped in red and gold. Or what does it sound like?
Or you know that gas
And the taste?
gas supply contracts.
Rich and oh so satisfying.
Amstel Malta, made with premium quality ingredients. Now in a sleek
There
can.
are contracts that are
Still listening? Go get yours. It's now available.
With Amstel Malta, there is always more. Be your best.
At the point in time, we were generating 8,000, 9,000. That's what you can say.
Interesting conversation here, both on air and off air here. Breakfast in the City on City 105.1. You are still locked onto City Press. The second half of the show brought to you by Amstel. On the main right there, alongside Ini, George Ramosis and Wadi Ahime here with us today on the show. We're having a conversation about the Senate looking to ensure the further amendments to the Electricity Amendment Bill of 2023, strengthening it and the issues around the power sector. And it's been not, I wouldn't say polarizing views, but different ways in which we see the power issue in the country. Joshua, we were about to say something before we went on the break, and then I want us to get into how we can further decentralize power. And states coming into that. I hear that a Finnish company is going to invest in Lagos, a 30 megawatt generation here with the co-distribution company, and how that could help people. We need more of that in the country. But stick to your thoughts.
To piggyback off what you've just said now, this is the expectation, getting more investors into that space. And beyond getting the investors need to know that their funds are secure, that their assets and infrastructure is secure, and this is where government plays a role in terms of regulatory and enforcing. Because I read some part of what the Senate was saying. A lot of what they were saying was there was no enforcement of the 2023 Power Act. And I'm saying you're coming back with the 2025 amendment when we both know that there's no enforcement. Investors' funds are not safe. The bank loans that were guaranteed have been flouted. Now, my counterparts countered that. I said, look, if you look at Dangote built a refinery in arguably Nigeria's most difficult time with government backing. This is where you need your government to soft pedal a lot of things. This is where you need your government to come in. It's in the gas sharing
Possible
deal,
tax break and all that.
Exactly. These are the things, incentives that will get people in. Now, when you talk about debt, yes, I know that some of these debts are owed by government, but even in the mass market, you still see money left on the table. You have clusters where maybe industrial zones that are not even powered by public power supply, and you're leaving those monies on the table. If you have a debt with government, you can have a debt structuring agreement, and exchange that for some credit or for some tax break or for some certain things. These are creative ways you go about it, and then of course we expect that the government should pay for what they use. There's no excuse for that kind of activity, but let's not excuse the power companies themselves. They have not done as well as, let's say, the telecoms companies have done in investing into that sector. That if I privatize something to you, like this radio station, you can't come back to me as government to say, hey, please give me money to buy diesel. It's just wrong. It doesn't work.
So let's focus more now on what the states are doing, how they can bring in private investments in, because we've decentralized it, or we're trying to decentralize it now. The legal framework still is not very, very clear, and it looks like states are still dragging their leg in trying to make progress in that avenue.
So first and foremost, to respond to that is this. A number of things are happening across state. Lagos State, I guess, getting wind of the fact that they were going to decentralize has been the first one, was the first state that put out his regulation as he had to do. And a lot of conversations have continually gone on to improve on it. And I know 5 other states are currently on the map now. Kano just recently.
You think Oyo?
Kano just recently, about 2 weeks ago. Maybe what I would do, maybe you would ask Dr. Abate. I would send someone who will come and talk about it, who also he's been in this space over the last 10-15 years in power. But the fact remains this: where you don't understand how the funding structure must be, which is what everybody is fighting for, because everybody wants some form of guarantees towards getting back its money. But the fact remains that if investors had put 4 billion in 2013, 12 years ago, and I can't get returns in 12 years, then who is really going to come here? So understanding the fact that, one, like you said, regulation and enforcement, whose responsibility is it to enforce? The regulators. How are you enforcing it? And I'll give you a good example with one of the things you said in terms of investment. Under the Buhari regime, there was MAP in 2019. Do you realize that prices of meters were agreed and nobody talked about the duty with the customs? And the Ministry of Finance led that discussion. At the end of the day, that program failed for one simple reason. People wanted to bring in, whether it was components of meter, to assemble them or bring in meters, and the customs were telling you that the 25% duty was not waived. So what happened when you were, like you said, and I agree with you, when you sit on the table and everybody who is meant to have a discussion, we saw what happened some time back with just 1 second, with I won't call the names of disco. However, where those kind of things happen, and those in government, whether it's the defense or the finance or the producers, and don't sit down and agree on an amicable way to provide power. You don't just wake up and say, oh, band A. And I say it now and I beat my chest on it, and anybody who is in the power sector that wants to contest it, band A money cannot pay for power supply in Nigeria.
Thank you very, very much for that. Let's